I'm never going to rush off comments like that. Are you kidding me? Okay, so now we're going to try and I'm going to try and sum up. I'm going to do the short attention span CEO summary kind of stuff. So, so we just spent an hour on PFDD, and I'm going to try and compress that into 3 words: measure what matters. Right? So, we know that it's hard because there's variability, and we know that the only way that you can rely on any kind of treatment or therapy to be demonstrably proven to be effective is to go through the FDA process. Okay, so FDA is the gatekeeper. There are thousands of conditions out there. SCI affects huge numbers of people, but there are many things the FDA doesn't know. PFDD, it's a big old meeting. It's a big old meeting so that FDA can find out what matters to people with SCI, so that when a sponsor brings them a set of data, they can look at that and go, well, 4 years ago, 4 months ago, whatever, we were told this is what's important, and you companies and you industry, you've done this. Do those match up? So as a field, as a maturation of a field, instead of like throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it works, we become involved in driving the process. We're defining a priori what is important and then going to find things that meet that criteria. So the PFDD, in many ways, is just it's a really expensive meeting, right? It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars just to pull a meeting together, right? But it's also open source, right? It's not really owned by any one entity in a conventional way. So we have to have this group organization. So your homework, your involvement in this conference, your participation, specifically each of you individually, your participation in this conference, the ask to you is to think about what you just heard for the last hour. You might be very familiar with PFDD. It might be a totally new subject for you. But what we, as a very informal and impromptu group of, sort of working group of folks that have a perspective and opinions about this, we want to know, can you bring something to this process? Do you have ideas? Do you have experience? Do you want to be involved in a PFDD? It's a big project. But if you're able to help the FDA understand, not that they're not very smart individuals, but there's thousands of conditions. But if we can help them understand, hey, these are things that we think matter, and maybe start to close or bridge some of the gaps, right? And the commentary when I was first coming into this field, the people would say, oh, you know, it's the idea of throwing away your wheelchair and going and running a marathon, versus when I talk to people who have injuries saying, you know, any more gain would be nice. And it might not be the gain you think of, Brian. It might not be, you know, manual dexterity. It might be other things that matter to me. Like, come on, FDA doesn't know that for thousands of conditions. So it's incumbent on us, and we have an opportunity, but we have finite resources. There's only so many people who can put in so much time. So our ask, the group, I'm speaking for the group that met earlier today, our ask to you individually is just think about this. Talk with some people about this. Learn about PFDD. And then get back to any of us and say, hey, I want to know more. I want to learn more. I want to be involved. Here's how I can help. It's very open source, deregulated. We're at the very beginning, but this is what mature fields do. This is how mature indications that have a lot of therapeutic choices, this is how they do it. So we know that. There's a roadmap. Let's follow the roadmap. We can be successful like some of those other areas. All right, so with that, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to have a whole bunch of really interesting early-stage companies telling us about what they're doing. Thanks very much. We'll see you in a few minutes.